Oh, welcome everyone. My name's Dave DuBois. I'm the state climatologist for New Mexico, and I'm just really appreciate you guys being here and interested in the ZiaMet expansion. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go through a presentation, kind of talking about the history of ZiaMet, where we've been and where we're headed, and hopefully you'll have some questions. I think we'll do the presentation and then we'll hold a Q&A afterwards. And as Helena mentioned, this is recorded, and I think we'll have an opportunity to share that. And I also have some handouts that I may put into the chat, or if that doesn't work, we can always email those out, and as well as the PowerPoint presentation if you want a copy of that. So I'm going to go ahead and get rolling. And we're going to talk about the expansion of the statewide weather network, the ZiaMet, mesonet. And I get this here. All right, so let me move something out of the way here from my office. Okay, here we go. All right, so so basically what we're doing is, okay, let me go. Okay, it went too far. The history of ZiaMet is basically we had the ZiaMet back in 1983. It wasn't called ZiaMet, it was just a weather station network with our first state climatologist. And it was mainly in the agricultural science centers across New Mexico. So we have 12 of those. We didn't have stations at all 12, but we had several of them. And mainly they served agricultural users. So for those who are more of the tech, I included the next bullet there. Let me turn my highlighter on. The parameters that we measured, and this is for long-term, 2-meter temperature, relative humidity, 3-meter winds, 10-centimeter, 4-inch soil temperature, solar radiation, and tipping bucket. So all the necessary variables needed to estimate evapotranspiration, because that's one of the variables that a lot of people use, and they're needed to look at evaporation, irrigation scheduling, and things like that. And back then, all stations were funded through whatever grants that came through our office, federal, state research grants, and data was sent from each weather station to the NMSU main campus. We first started off with plain old telephone, copper wire, and modems that were analog, and now we're working in more modern methods with IP, and then a cell and satellite for the next version. So what we're doing is we have a lot of interest in expanding weather collection. So right now the problem is that there's not enough weather monitoring in rural areas. That's pretty much the bottom line. The goal of this expansion is to fill in the gaps and to provide a better coverage for programs that include weather in the policies. So things like when we're dealing with drought or extended drought, we've got programs in the Farm Bill that incorporate weather, and we found out over time that there's not enough coverage in a lot of our areas. So in a lot of the areas we have weather stations at airports, and most of those are at incorporated areas, cities, towns, in some areas, a few rural areas, but between them and there's a big expanses of New Mexico. And so what we've been doing is building partnerships with various entities, private landowners, as well as government agencies and tribal agencies. And so what we're doing is we're trying to fill in the gaps and do that intelligently as much as we can, to using between other networks like the RAWS, National Weather Service, Co-op, airports, SNOTEL at higher elevations, and then listen to stakeholder needs. What are some of the things that a lot of people use the data for, and then we'll try to match the goals and objectives to those, so that we can provide that as something useful. And so we're incorporating things like topography, elevation, land cover, and of course host availability, which we'll be talking about at the end of this presentation. So New Mexico is a big state, even with with a lot of stations. So our goal is to get about 6 stations per county. So we got 33 counties. And our eventual goal is to have 215 stations, at least for this, for phase 2, and we'll talk about phases. But if you do the math, that's a station every 566 square miles on average. If you do the math on the land area divided by 215, so that's still a daunting number, but it's better than it is right now. So we started off last year, and we finished that in June of this year. Is a partial expansion in mainly eastern New Mexico, and that's at the request of the legislative sponsors from New Mexico legislature. So so I just want to kind of give you the nuts and bolts, so you kind of understand where we're coming from. Our funding, since we support federal programs and weather forecasting, we got funding from the National Mesonet program. That's basically the workhorse for providing data throughout the whole country for many users. A lot of it's for weather forecasting for your weather.gov, and then what numbers go into that model. Some of that information goes there, but a lot of that information goes to local offices. So like the National Weather Service Albuquerque office, the Midland, Texas, as well as the Santa Teresa office. And so we've had a lot of meetings with legislators, ranchers, and a National Weather Service. That's what the NWS is, over several years in the past. And drought has been our primary motivation for more data. We definitely agree with that, and that we definitely need more data. And so we first did a budget request in FY fiscal year 21. It was vetoed. That was right at the beginning of COVID. So I understand. Second state request, granted partial funding. Third state request in current fiscal year, additional funding plus maintenance funding. So that's sort of the big deal, is having something you can get money, but it's always difficult to get operations. And so that was part of what we did. Is this was sort of, it was tied together. It's kind of like a lock and key. You have to have a key if you're going to put a lock on. So if we needed that maintenance funding to keep things running. And then we also were tickled to have federal funding from the omnibus bill, and that was a request through Senator Heinrich. And that's what we're doing on right now. Is we're talking about, that's why we're here in this presentation, is to talk about the equipment that we're buying, and then that we're enabled through state funding to actually install these. So this is where we are right now. Is if you go out and we have weather stations, and some of them are in the process of being instrumented with sensors. We got towers out at all those dots, and so the different colors are different tiers. So we decided to introduce the expansion through different tiers. So tier 1 are the mesonet. We'll talk about that in a minute. The 10 meter. Tier 2s are kind of typically the 10-foot or 3-meter version of that, smaller version, and then tier 3 are more of the smaller yet. And then I'll talk more in detail about this. So we went from 31 to 97, and that's what's here in this map with legislative funds. And this is what we call phase 1. And then what we're going to be going into, why we're here today, is what we're going to be doing in phase 2. And so these are all the red and yellow are the professional grade Campbell Scientific stations, and we're going to be adding a lot more of those. And stay tuned for the next few minutes to see that. So I'm going to give some photos of some of our installs for different tiers, and then we'll be talking about that as we go along. So our tier 1 is our standard 10-meter mesonet. It has 10-meter winds and air temperature, 2-meter temperature and relative humidity. We also collect solar radiation, barometric pressure, and we have tipping bucket, as well as our goal is to get weighing gauges at these sites. And then also we noticed a lot of interest in soil. So since we have been collecting soil temperature, but we haven't been collecting soil moisture. So we're going to add that in as a new data product. And then at the tier 1, our goal is to get more than one soil depth, temperature, and moisture content. So that will provide us kind of a sense of drought, give us lots of information about infiltration and storage and moisture as we go transition from monsoon to the dry periods, and kind of gives us a sense of how we are with storage. And then we can pretty much put these stations anywhere. We have cellular capability as well as working with a satellite company. So as long as we can see the horizon or the sky, we can get telemetry at these. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 are the smaller version of the tier 1, basically, and it's the one section of the tower, and so you can kind of see the tower in the background there. Remember, these are all 5-minute data collection. All of our stations are. And the tier 2 are the 3-meter wind speed, wind direction, 2-meter temperature, and relative humidity. That's kind of the standard heights for the measuring temperature and humidity, and as well as we're measuring soil temperature and moisture. And like I said before, we're going to install just one in the initial install, the 10 centimeter, but our goal is to get multiple depths over time, install other ones. And then we also collect solar radiation, barometric pressure, and a tipping bucket. And you can see that in this diagram here. So that tipping bucket here is over on the right. The temperatures, the wind speed is here. We're actually going to be doing most of them in a different sensor, which we'll show you in a minute. Solar radiation, and then the temperature and relative humidity, and then the barometric pressure is inside the data logger box. And everything is solar powered, battery. So there's no need for any line power, where it's all DC. There's battery, solar panel, charger. So there's it's totally standalone. We've got the modems, the comms are all powered by batteries. So for all of our stations, that's the case. And so we've got some of our stations and that have been installed in the past, and we've transferred these ownership to us in 2015. They're at 16 different locations. And so these are also part of our network as well. I just wanted to bring them out and show them to you, just so you know. And this particular one is over at Chaco Culture, over on the top of the mesa. So for tier 3, these are lower cost. They're not low cost, but they're lower cost. As you can see a picture of one. This one is actually south of Santa Rosa and rangelands. And so with this tier, where our goal for this kind of weather station is mainly focused on rainfall and temperature. However, we're collecting all the parameters, and so as well as soil temperature and moisture at these stations. And these, of course, follow our methodology for 5-minute data. However, the cell modems upload the data, basically calls to the cloud and then downloads the data every 15 minutes. But the data itself is 5-minute. And then as of all these, we have the option of putting cattle panel fences around. Just as an example, here's a good example of that. So that's kind of the footprint of our stations. It's a little bigger for the tier 1s because we have guy wires that support the tower to keep it in case we get really high winds. But this is pretty typical in terms of the fence for tier 2 and tier 3 stations. And so we also have our web portal, which Stan Engel is also on this call, and he's the author of this and has programmed all this. And it's a really good resource to get access to our data. And so if you go to weather.nmsu.edu, you can get there right now and go and look at what data. And then and the front page, we have a selection of sites. But if you go below that, there's a link you can get access to all the sites. And then we also have a map of COCORAs, as well as the current U.S. drought monitor status map for New Mexico. So let me just kind of go over a little bit into that website. I just picked one site just for an example. This is up in Mora at the Forestry Center there. And I showed here in the graphs here, there's the air temperature in black and then the dew point. And so this is the 5-minute data. And Stan has made it so you can mouse over and get values and times. So this is from a few months ago, but just show you when we had a really dry period when the dew point was only 7 degrees and the air temperature was 45.7. So it gives you a sense. And then over on the right side, it gives you a tabular numbers that you can look at real quick, what the current conditions are, dew point, humidity, speeds, gusts, directions, and then the 24-hour precipitation. And then there's also below that, which I clipped off here, is since midnight. You can get that number. And then we also offer for all the stations, we calculate wind chill, heat index, and of course relative humidity. So it gives a sense of what we actually feel. If, that's one of the products, and we're always interested in knowing other products, the weather-derived products that would be useful for our people who use our data. And this is another access to data for winds. The top shows the wind speed, and then the wind gusts in the kind of yellowish, orangish, as well as the wind direction, and goes from 0 to 360. So this is, and you can of course mouse over this to get numbers. If you're looking at a damage from a high wind, a microburst or something like that, you can go and pick off a wind speed and gust to basically document what happened if that was needed. And another thing that we really use a lot is the accumulated and individual daily rainfall numbers. So this is a graph that shows that from January, and I just made this particular request from their database, January to April, and then how much was actually falling at the station, accumulated. So you can see it just over 2 inches fell between January and toward the end of April. And then the blue bars are the individual 24-hour amounts. And these are all in units of inches. So this gives you a sense, and of course you can mouse over this as well. And one of the other things that we're working on, this is not on the website right at the moment, but we also collect soil temperature and moisture. And this is at one of our stations. So the top graph here shows the moisture content at one of our stations in Hidalgo County. That's all the way down in the far southwest corner of New Mexico as you go into Arizona. But it kind of see the really dry. This is 10% moisture content. And then we had a rain event, popped it up another 5 or so percent. And you can see that the drying out. So it gives a sense of how much each rain event made a difference in the soil, at least at least for this station, the top 4 inches of soil. So here's another rain event that kept the moisture in a little longer, and then over time you can see the drying out, and it kind of returns back to what it was pre-monsoon, and it gives you a really good sense. And our goal is to provide those at different depths to see, because we have different soil types, different horizons, different layers of soil that allow different infiltration rates, and so we can get a sense of what's going on at each location. Then the bottom is the soil temperature. It gives you a sense of the I know a lot of folks use that for planting, for irrigation sometimes, and crop harvesting. And so one of the things we do is our goal is to make sure that the data is available to the public. So we provide that. And so this is an example of one of our accesses and or how we provide data to the public through this one website. This particular one on the right is called Mesa West, and it's basically a statewide real-time network of, and then we dump our data, and some of it they grab it, and so it's available on a real-time basis, and it's all the real-time weather stations, federal, state, as well as private, all across the country actually. And then our data is also pushed to other NOAA websites. There's several of them, and as well as our New Mexico State University website. It's available, and I think I showed you that in the last few slides. But there's several ways to get access to our data. It's all available, and I'll be interesting to hear how your comments and kind of ideas on how to access data. How would you like it, and can we meet those needs? And so this is just an example of, if you go to that Mesa West and click on that dot on that map, this is kind of the information you get. You can get tabular as well as graphs like this. This was a particular one, same location. You can get the same kind of graphs, temperature, precip, all the different variables. So it's another way to get our data, as well as from our website. And so the bottom line is, since we've got the network out there, but we're in the middle of expansion right now. So we've got another 118 stations we want to add. We've got a few that we've targeted, and all those white circles on this map are the ones we're looking for locations, and the black triangles are the ones that are already out there already installed. but we're looking for site hosts to get new weather stations, and these are all approximate. We can move them around a bit, and we're focusing mainly on western New Mexico, and then the central part. And we're also adding a few in other parts, but our main goal is to push the western side of the state, because really there's not a lot of weather stations there as well. So we're going to add another 45 tier 1, 54 tier 2s, and 19 tier 3 stations. And so, as always, the data will be made available to the public on a near real-time basis. So that's kind of where this leads us into. So if you're interested in hosting a weather station, we are seeking long-term site hosts. So what does that mean? So like I mentioned early on in the presentation, we are fully funded. We've got funds right now to fund the equipment, the installation, and the annual operation costs. And so we are in the process of getting technicians hired who will be tasked to basically maintain those. So provide the maintenance visits, go there, check on them, look at the data, do calibrations if necessary, and then make any repairs or fix problems that have occurred. And then also in NMSU, through the funds, we will cover all the costs to provide data on our website, as well as to our partners out there, providing it to the public. And so if you're interested, I encourage you to, I mean, you're already here, so I think you're interested, but the next steps are to follow up with a call with me, or a on-site visit to kind of assess what we need. And I can bring I've been using Google Earth, and I have kind of a live version that I have on my laptop, and I could kind of work with you on that, finding out where locations are good. And then once we get a sense of what looks great, we can get a latitude, longitude. We can determine one or more locations for the weather stations, and then our university insurance requires us to have a no-cost lease agreement that you sign, and then it has some legal basically an agreement that's basically talks about who's responsible for what and things like that, because it's important to have that in case something does happen. Not that we want anything to happen, but we have to cover, because we have insurance. So that's part of that, and it's not very lengthy. And I can send that over. Whoever's interested, I can email that out, so you can get a sense of what that looks like. And then the last step would be, once that looks good, we got locations just to install, just to get finalize that, and then a schedule an installation with our construction contractor. So we've got a contractor that we're in the process of getting hired, and they'll start likely right around January. And remember, they have 118 stations to install, which is a lot. So we'll have to schedule those in by geographic areas, and they can schedule clusters. So since it's more efficient to have them kind of stay in one, maybe a couple county area, and then kind of work on all those, and then move on to another area. So that's how we did it in the last fiscal years, is kind of geographic clusters. So if we can get in the lease agreements and locations in as soon as we can, in terms of getting it in, so they can put together a proposal on when they can do the installs. It would be great if we can get them all in by the end of the year, end of December. That would be great. We could probably move it a little bit into January, but it'd be great if we can get it so that we can get them to get going, because we're going to be getting shipments of the towers in probably before then. I think they're in the process of getting those delivered. And so that is pretty much what I have to share, because this is a really important time. Even though NMSU is running this, because we're the New Mexico Climate Center, this is a resource for the entire state of New Mexico. So this is a state the state network for weather collection, and it covers everybody who lives in New Mexico, no matter where you are. Our goal is to build this and to provide data, and this is our kind of our treasure, because other states have it, like Colorado, West Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona. Other states have this kind of network, and they're also expanding as well. So we want to, we're not like really competing, but this is the direction we're heading, is having more information and having intelligent decisions based off of weather. And I think I'm be up for any questions and follow up with anybody. And I think I will put my contact information here. You can send me an email, call me in my office, and I'm here to help. And to if you're interested, get in touch with me, and then we can chat about, we can get another Zoom, or I can come by in your office, and we can talk in person. Either way, to what's the next step. So I appreciate being able to be here, and the support from the Southwest Climate Hub, the Drought Learning Network, and all the others here